In this tutorial, we are going to create an instructions page and we're going to get some text coming in a sort of letter at a time, and we're going to use drag and drop for this, so we're going to make it really easy. So in my game at the moment, I've got three rooms. I've got a menu which looks like this, and I've got an instructions page which looks like this, and we've got our game which looks like this. So what we are going to do is we're going to make sure the menu is the first one to load, which is here, and when we click on the play button it'll go straight to the room, and when we click the instructions it's going to go straight to the instructions. So if we just go on to the instructions very quickly, you can see there's nothing on there at the moment, and I have got a buttons layer ready set to go, so I'm just going to drag in the old play in here, and what that does is it basically allows me to go to the instructions page and then go straight to the room. And if we just try this out just to show, and just one thing, this is the same button that's on the front page. So if I click on play, it goes straight there. And likewise, if we click the instructions page, it'll go straight there as well. Okay, so how do we get some instructions coming up here? Well, you can make a title, you can make this look nice, but what we're going to do is first of all focus on just making the instructions come up a sort of line at a time. Now, in order to do this, we are going to make a new object. So before I go any further, I'm going to create a new group and I'm going to call this instructions. And what we're going to do then is we're going to make a new one called O instruction. Now, I could call it O instructions, but the problem is I've already got a button which is called O instructions down here. So that's why I've called that one O instruction. So what we're going to do is we are going to create a set of variables. So if I click on add and then create, and then in here we're going to add in a var. And the first thing we're going to do with this var is we're going to make something called text speed. And that's going to be set to 0, that's fine. We're then going to add a step event, and we're then going to go text speed, and we're going to basically say 0.5. And I'm going to make that relative. Now, the smaller you make this number, the slower it's going to come in, and we'll play around with that in a moment. And the next thing then we're going to do is we're going to use a draw GUI. And this then will allow me to basically get the text to appear. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a text, which is here, draw value. And if you can't find it, because I've recently used it, it's under the drawing tools. And you can see I've got here caption. So I'm just going to actually remove that for a moment, and I'm just going to leave it as 2 speech marks. If I do get rid of it, you can see there's a red box now which has appeared. So I need to have something in it, even if it's blank. And what we're going to do is you're going to use a function which is built into GameMaker. Now this function is called string underscore copy. And one thing you'll notice is as soon as I start typing this, it's going to ask for 3 properties. It's going to ask for the string, it's going to ask for the index, and it's going to ask for the count as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to start putting it together. So string copy is the text that we want to appear. So please collect all of the diamonds. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to put more than one line in now in a moment, but let's just put this in first. Now what we're going to do is we're going to close that here. If I just zoom it in to make it a bit bigger, and let's move this over and expand this out a little bit. So all I've done is I've said please collect all of the diamonds. And then what we're going to do is you're going to put a comma 1, because this is the index, and then comma text speed. We're going to use that variable that we created earlier. Now this will basically bring almost a letter in at a time, and we need to put this now into the instructions page. So if I double click on the instructions and drag this in, now I haven't told it where to put it, so it's going to put it into the top corner. We can adjust that now in a moment. So let's render the game. And let's go to instructions and keep an eye now in the top left hand corner. Please select all of the diamonds. Lovely. So what happens if we want to move this down? Well, quite easy. If we go back into the instructions and we basically choose a position. So let's go down to say 300, and then Y will do 300 again. Let's just see where that's put it. Not quite sure why it doesn't render. Let's try it again. Here we go. Okay, so let's click on instructions. There we are. Please collect all of the diamonds. Now then, what we need to do is make that a little bit bigger, and we're going to put something on another line. So let's concentrate on making it a little bit bigger. We're probably going to have to move it up a little bit as well. Now, if you do wish to move this around, what you need to do is change these X and the Y positions. So let's say, for argument's sake, if I want to move it up a little bit, and we want to move it over to the right. Obviously, the Y is the up and down, and the X is the left and the right as well. So when we render it this time, you can see now that's up in the top corner. So please collect all of the diamonds. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to now make that look a little bit nicer. So if I just zoom back out a little bit, we are going to make a font. So in the fonts at the top here, in the fonts folder, I'm going to right click, go to create, and then go down to font. And we're going to call this font instruction. And we can choose a nice little font. Now, I typically like to go with something that's quite readable, so I'm going to stick with a sort of like an Arial. And I'm going to go with something like Arial Rounded. And we're going to make that now quite large. So we'll go up to, say, 20. Okay, so let me just close that now at the moment. And what we are then going to do is go back to the O instruction, which is up here, and we're now going to add the font in. So to add the font in, you use the red T and the T, and then we choose the font using the asset browser. Now we've only got one font in there at the moment in this game, but now when I render this, and I click on play, you can see now, please select all the diamonds and to come into a nicer font. So what happens if we want to change the color of this? Well, again, you do the same sort of thing. Use the ink bucket here, and let's set the color first. So you can see it's set to white. Let's click on that, and let's choose, say for example, a yellow. So I'm going to click in the color mixer here, and let's go for a slightly darker tinge to the yellow. Click OK, and then let's click on play again. And now you can see it is yellow. Now, one thing to remember with fonts is once you've changed the color, it's always good practice to reset the color. So what I'm going to do is just add in another draw color at the bottom here, so that any future text that I use in the game won't be yellow, it'll be white. So we basically set it to yellow, set the font, and then we draw whatever font we want, and then we're going to reset it to yellow as well. So we're going to reset it to white. So what happens if we need a little bit more in here? Now this is where it gets a little bit confusing, and it's sometimes handy if you use a text editor like Word or WordPad or something. So if you were writing a lot of text, so let's say for argument's sake we're going to write a bit more. So I'm going to just copy this text here. Copy it, and let's go back to WordPad. So please select all the diamonds. You will need to remove the enemies by shooting them. You can press the spacebar and use the mouse to aim. Now you'll notice I just wrote this now as one long line. So if we copy this and we go back to our thing here and we paste this in, so I'm just going to go and paste this straight in. Let me right click and paste because for some reason my shortcut keys don't work. And let's go and click on play. So what you're going to find now is we've got a little bit of an issue. So it's going to start writing beautifully and then it's just going to go off the page. So what we need to do is we need to basically put this onto a new line each time. Now fortunately we can do this using what's called escape characters. So what I'm going to do is use \n. Now you'll notice I've got \n there and I've got \n here, and I'm just going to copy this once more and I'm going to paste it back in. Now this is why I was saying earlier it might be an idea for you to use a text editor, because it does make this process a lot easier. So let's paste in here, and you'll notice these \n's are here. Now watch what happens when we play these. So please select all the diamonds, and you'll notice now it's put this onto a new line. Okay, now if you wanted to do 2 spaces between, all you do is you do 2 of these \n's, and it makes it really straightforward. So I've just put 1 in there now as an example. If we just see this in action, so please collect all the diamonds, you'll need the color, so remove the enemies, and then look at that, we've got a space there. So that's fairly easy, that's fairly nice. Now, what happens if you want to go back and edit the fonts as an example? Well, don't worry, because you've got the text in here and it's ready set to go. Just double click on the font and then we can make them bigger, or you can even change the font itself completely. So if we go here, in fact, let me just rebuild it again. Here we go. So there we are, that's slightly bigger. And that's a way to go. Now, what happens if you want to get a nice sort of heading in here? Well, you can do that, no problem at all. Let's go and add in a nice big heading. Well, you can do this in a number of different ways. Earlier on in this little tutorial, I made a heading called Diamond Run. And all I did was I made a new sprite and I set the width and height to 700 by 200. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do the same thing again here. So right click on menu, go to create, and then we're going to set the sprite. And what I'm going to do is edit the sprite here by clicking on this resize. And really important here now, I'm going to take the tick out of the maintain this aspect ratio, and I'm going to set it to 700, and with the height, let's do 200 again. And when I click apply, what it's going to do is it's going to make now a slightly wider image. And when I click on edit image, we're going to go and click on the text tool. And what I'm going to do just before we start actually typing, I'm going to choose a font. Now, obviously with this, you need to be mindful of the fonts that you are using. So you need something that's readable. So I'm just going to go with just one here now, just as an example. And you'll notice I've just typed that now. What we need to do is highlight this font, all of it, right, every single character, and then at the top there you can basically manually type in a number. Now, something to notice, when you actually do this, obviously I've gone off the side there now, so I need to reduce it. With GameMaker, once you've basically made the font and you click off it, it's going to say, are you going to commit changes? If you click on yes, that's saved. You can't then go back in and edit it. Okay, because I saved it now as an image. Now the good thing with this is if I close this, and let's call this S instructions, or I'm going to call it S instruction heading. And what I'm going to do then is just drag this onto the instruction screen. So if I click, hold down with the mouse, drag, and then drop, notice now it's going to give me an error. It's saying, are you sure you want to do this? Yep, we want to make an asset layer. And there we have it. We have now our instructions. So if we now click on play, and then click instructions, you can see they're all coming in a bit at a time. Now the last thing I'm going to just go through is what happens if you adjust the speed. So if we go back up to our option here, in the step, if you make this 0.1 as an example, you can see now this comes in much slower. Okay, so obviously your choice of how fast you want it coming in terms of color, design, style. The only thing I will say is make sure you keep it simple.